speaking about the RAMES trial, so one of the interesting presentations from ASCO this year was the RAMES trial. So this is a clinical trial performed in patients with advanced mesothelioma, and specifically patients with advanced mesothelioma who've already had chemotherapy. And as things currently stand, there aren't really any licensed approved treatments in that subgroup of patients, although based on existing trials, a whole range of different drugs get given, such as vinorelbine, gemcitabine, and increasingly people are interested in immunotherapy. The RAMES trial is a trial looking at an anti-angiogenic strategy combined with chemotherapy. So patients were randomized to either single-agent chemotherapy with gemcitabine, which is given on day 1 and day 8 every 21 days, or that regimen combined with Ramucirumab. So this is Ramucirumab given on day 1 every 3 weeks. Essentially, Ramucirumab is an anti-vascular monoclonal antibody given as an infusion. And the results were really quite stark. They presented overall survival data, and you can see very clearly that there is an overall survival benefit. The median overall survival was 7.5 months with gemcitabine alone, and 13.8 months with gemcitabine with Ramucirumab. So really quite a substantial improvement in the median survival for a very difficult to treat cancer. So I think that's a positive study. The toxicity was, as you would expect for both drugs, actually quite manageable. And I think there'd be many mesothelioma patients who could potentially be offered that treatment if it was subsequently registered as a defined option. I think that there are a few things of interest happening in the mesothelioma world. Much of that revolves around immunotherapy. One of the most tantalizing things, I think, right now is that we have a press release from BMS about a trial called Checkmate 743, comparing immunotherapy to chemotherapy. The results have not been published or presented at any meeting, but a press release, which, just to remind everyone, companies, when they see the data, are forced because they're publicly listed companies and this is share price sensitive information, they are legally obliged to issue a press release about a trial being positive or not positive. So all we have is a press release saying this trial has met its primary endpoint. So we haven't seen that data, but everyone's really actively awaiting that. So that's really one big thing. I think the other big thing is the ongoing information and data about immunotherapy in mesothelioma. We have a series of phase 2 studies in the second line setting showing different immunotherapy drugs have activity. We have very little first line data, but the one thing that we do have in ASCO was a presentation about the combination of cisplatin pemetrexed with durvalumab. And we've already had a presentation about an Australian trial called the DREAM trial. And so this is a US study and basically showing very high levels of activity, median survival of 20 months, which is very good for this disease. And I think we're just waiting for more randomized studies to give their results in this space. So I think in mesothelioma, currently chemotherapy is fairly well established. We've got evidence from RAMES about anti-angiogenic agents improving efficacy, and we're getting increasing evidence that immunotherapy is active in some of these patients. So a very actively developing field, and it's going to evolve over the next year or so.